Welcome to the My Creative Days podcast, where we will talk about all things DIY, home decor, decorating tips, and creating a beautiful home on a budget. I am hoping our time together will spark a creative idea, help you plan your next DIY, or inspire you to finally tackle that project you keep putting off. Grab your favorite cup of motivation and let's chat. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Today I have some fixes or tips for common DIY disasters. That's what I'm calling it. But just for, mistakes or things that go wrong when you're doing a DIY project that you weren't planning on, or especially if this is, if you're new to DIYing or you're really wanting to try it, these things will definitely come up. It's totally normal, but if you have these and know about these and maybe know about some of the things that I'm going to talk before you tackle these projects, this is just going to help you. So, disaster number one is you've drilled too many holes. So you've just finished hanging a shelf or a piece of art or something on the wall, and now there's holes all over the wall, right? From you trying to attempt to get it just right. First of all, the one thing that you should do that will help this is lay out whatever you're hanging on the floor. So especially if you're hanging a bunch of things like a gallery wall or something, lay out whatever you have on the floor so you can get a visual of how you like it and what it looks like. If you can do this on a plain floor, meaning not a carpet or a rug that's got a ton of design and color, but like a hardwood floor or a solid color carpet, that just helps. It just gets rid of all the excess noise from a lot of colors or patterns in like a rug or something. Once you lay it out and kind of see, you can kind of move things around and know you want this little frame above this shelf and you want to move this over. It just gives you'll be drilling or hammering in less holes that way. But if you have too many holes and we've all done this, just, fill the extra holes with spackle or wall filler. Once it's dry, sand it smooth. And then all you have to do is touch it up with, your wall paint. It's not a big deal. Sometimes we've all been there too, where it's like, oh, I'll just hang this little frame picture over those 3 holes and you won't even know it's there. You can always do that as well, but it's not the end of the world. But if you do a little bit of planning and a little bit of laying out first, that's just going to help you so much when you actually go to hang it up. Another one, disaster number 2, paint runs or drips. So you've just painted a room and now you see drips and runs, in your work if the paint's dried. Don't panic. It's not a huge deal. Use like a razor blade or utility knife. I like those, the window scraper razor blades. Do you know what I mean? Those I like better because I feel like I have more control over them. Once you can just use that to get the drips off, and then again, lightly sand what's left over and then, touch up with a little bit of paint. It's not the end of the world. And a lot of these have quick fixes. But when you start painting, if it's a paintbrush or a roller, no matter what it is, you just don't want a ton of excess paint on whatever you're using to apply the paint, right? You want just enough so that you are, you're trimming or you're, rolling on the paint on the walls, but you don't want so much that it's, it's going to be dripping as it's drying. So just remember that when you are, applying the paint to the brush or the roller. You have screws or nails that won't hold. This is something that you need to either use a larger screw or 9.9 times out of 10 use an anchor. So if you are not drilling or nailing into a stud in the wall, and if you've got a pretty heavy piece of whatever art or whatever you're hanging, use an anchor because it's not going to hold, and over time you'll be laying in bed. I just know this from experience. You'll be laying in bed and there's going to be a huge thud in the living room and you're going to be like, what in the heck was that? Well, it's the shelf that just fell off the wall because you didn't screw it into, or you didn't have the screws or whatever it is, however you're, holding it up there. it's not in a stud and you didn't use an anchor. So always, if you're going into a stud, you don't need an anchor. It's going to hold so much better because it's got that extra wood behind it, right? That extra support behind it. But you should always have anchors on hand because especially if it's something heavy, you want to ensure that whatever you are nailing into the wall or screwing into the wall or hanging on the wall is going to stay there and not fall down, on somebody or in the middle of the night and scare you. Okay, disaster number 4, stuck paint roller or a brush. So this is not the end of the world, but there are ways to avoid this. And so if you are painting and you're gonna take a break for the night and you're gonna come back to it in the morning, your paintbrush and your roller need to be covered so well with plastic. Use plastic wrap, or if you have like grocery sacks or those plastic sacks, but remember that if there's any, like if you can think of a Target plastic sack that's got the red, like the red logo or something on it, sometimes depending on the store and the bag, that can transfer onto like your roller. So just remember that. So if you can find the plain bags, like shopping bags, or just use plastic wrap, Ziploc bags work as long as your biggest, what you need to do is you need to make sure that the roller, the wet roller and the wet brush are fully covered by plastic. There can be no air going into it. And then you won't get this stuck paint roller. But I actually shared a reel on Instagram, on TikTok, on my YouTube shorts. So make sure you're following My Creative Days on all of those accounts because I share this stuff all the time. But when you are, let's say you're getting out the actual roller and then you actually need like the pole with the, if that is full of paint, take a utility knife and scrape off that excess paint before you put the roller on it. You want to just take a utility knife. It doesn't take long at all. If there's any excess paint that's dried on that, this is when you are just going to start to paint, right? Like you're just putting the roller on it and you're going to go paint the dining room. If there's a lot of dried paint on that roller, just take a utility knife and scrape it off. And that's going to make a world of difference in how your roller rolls. Same with like a paintbrush. So if you've got dried paint stuck on a paintbrush, again, I shared a video on how to do this on those channels. So make sure you're following there. Try hot boiling water and vinegar and let your, pour it into like a bowl or whatever, a cup, whatever you're using, and let your paintbrushes sit in there. You can try using like a wire brush and, brushing out the brush to get the paint off there. There's ways to avoid this. So you just really have to take care of your tools, your painting tools, and no matter what stage, if you are, like I said, saving it for another day, or you're totally done with it and you need to clean it out, make sure that you are fully cleaning out that brush and get all that paint out. And sometimes using paint thinner to clean the brush will help too, but it's not the end of the world, but definitely there are ways to go around it so you're not having to waste a lot of time. Disaster number 5, over-drilled holes in wood. So you drilled through your wood project and now the holes are too large to hold the screws properly. This is one we learned from my dad. Depending on the size of your hole and like what you're trying to do, grab some wood dowels or toothpicks. And you're going to insert those into the oversized hole and then with a little bit of wood glue. And then once it's dry, cut off any excess, sand it smooth, and then drill a new pilot hole for your screws. This will give the screw something solid to hold on to. Disaster number 6, sticky wood glue. So you've applied wood glue, and now it's oozing out all over the place and it's making a mess. Okay, this one, you want to wipe away any excess wood glue with a damp cloth before it dries. Again, that's what you should be doing beforehand. If you don't, you can try and scrape it with a utility knife or again, like that window scraper, depending on like where it is and what it is. A chisel may work, but one thing we always do, we use if we're ever using wood glue, again, 9.9 times out of 10, we are using clamps that will hold the pieces together tightly while the glue dries. And this just really helps because you may get some excess squeeze out when you do that, but it's going to hold everything tight. And as soon as you see any glue coming out, just wipe it away with a damp cloth. You want to do that right away. But if not, you can use a utility knife or like the window scraper razor and get it off. But the clamps help so much when you're doing projects like that. Accidental disaster number 7, accidental paint splatter. You were painting a project and now there are splatters everywhere. This is so funny because, so if Matt and I are painting a room, Matt will always roll. He hates to trim. So I'm like, that's fine. I don't feel like I'm really great at rolling, so I'll do all the trimming. But it's so funny because he doesn't know, because I'm then down like on the floor and doing the trimming. And it's like, Matt, you don't think that even if you don't, you've been rolling and painting for years, that roller, it's still going to splatter a little bit. And if you're standing and rolling, you're not going to see those splatters on the floor. And we have a lot of, either LVP or hardwood floor in our home. So, as far as a rug, like you probably won't see it depending on the color. But it's splattered everywhere. So number 1, if you are painting, you need a drop cloth or whatever to cover any surface around you. That paint travels. And even if it's the smallest, specks or whatever, they're still there and you're going to see them if you're down on the floor. And here's the funny thing. A quick fix is, catch it while it's still wet. And then it's, you can wipe it right up. And you totally can go and do that. But I find that I'm just literally smearing paint then all over the hardwood floor or the LVP that we have, right? And so I wait until it's completely dried. So I just all those little specks, you literally can just use a small putty knife and just kind of go over them and it'll scrape right off, right? I always then have, after it's dried, I use that, like that window scraper or something. You just don't want to, scrape or gouge any of your wood floor or whatever. But a putty knife should do it, and that's not going to damage it. You can even put like some paper towel or a really thin cloth around the end of the putty knife if you're worried about damaging the floor. Sometimes it's not, that adds too much padding and it won't come up, but you can definitely try it. And once you do it a few times, you'll get the hang of it and you're not going to damage anything. But I always have like a wet paper towel with me as well. So then as I'm picking, as I'm scraping the splatters, then I just use that damp paper towel to pick them up. So again, it's not the end of the world, but there's definitely ways around it. Use a drop cloth. And then you can definitely get it when it's still wet, but I like to wait until they're dry and then go over it. I feel like it is extra work, but otherwise I just feel like I'm just smearing paint all over the floor, and it's a little more frustrating that way. That is all I have for these little fixes for DIY disasters, which aren't really disasters. Like, they are fixable, but there are, I hope, some of the what do I want to say, tips that I shared for how you can avoid this. If you just remember to do those things before you even start the project, you won't have these disasters at all, and your project should run smoothly. But it is DIY, so just know you should have a plan B, C, and D just in case it doesn't go according to plan A. Let me know if you found this helpful. If there were some other, quick fixes that you would add, email me, lindsay@mycreativedays.com. Reach out to me on Instagram @mycreativedays. If there's a podcast topic or question or idea you have, please reach out to me. Those are my favorite podcasts to record. Your questions, your comments, whatever it is, they're always so helpful. So please keep those coming in to us. They just help us so much. So if you found this helpful, share the podcast. It's hard for us to know who's on the podcast. So when you share it, it just helps us so much to get in front of some other ears that may not know that we are here. So we appreciate that so much as well. And until next time, I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you very soon. Hello, friends. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I'm grateful that you tune in every week and that you share the show with your family and friends. I love having creative chit chats with you, and my hope is that this podcast will inspire you to try a new project, start a DIY that you've been putting off, and decorate your home exactly how you want it. There are a few ways you can help us with the podcast. Follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you could take a few minutes to leave the podcast a review, that would help us so much. Again, thank you for being here, and I look forward to our chat next week. Bye-bye.